So this is 07:20 hours GMT on Thursday, the 30th of September 2021. And this is the KhoodeelaR television channel, KhoodeelaR television channel. And this is part of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. That is to say, this is part of the campaign, evidential campaign for justice for the Baby Angel Geronimo. This is centered on the dark land, evil land, fronted by the congenital liar, Boris Johnson, and containing in the cabal that Boris Johnson fronts, containing the criminal from the depraved DEFRA department, containing the criminal George Injustice. The George Injustice is a slightly rearranged second name for him. His official name remains Eustace, but based on the criminality that this individual has been engaged in fomenting, confecting, inventing against the most innocent and the healthiest baby angel Geronimo, it is absolutely justifiable to edit his name and call him Injustice, which is what he has been conspiring to inflict on the most innocent and healthiest baby angel Geronimo for as long as he has been there in that post. Okay, that's number one. So we shall be continuing more on that. A note about our broadcasting activities. We didn't broadcast an edition yesterday, that is Wednesday, the 29th of September 2021. What we can say to people who are new, watching this for the first time, is that our campaign, the KhoodeelaarTV campaign, maintains a number of accounts on social media, so-called, and we update on our campaign more often on the KhoodeelaarTV campaign on the Twitter. So twitter.com/KhoodeelaarTV. KhoodeelaarTV is spelled as it is spelled on the banners there. And KhoodeelaarTV, without any other words, when we use the KhoodeelaarTV word, has got an exclamation at the end, but when accessing the KhoodeelaarTV account on the Twitter, let's say, there shouldn't be any exclamation mark, but the KhoodeelaarTV. KhoodeelaarTV is a campaigning word which I devised just under 20 years ago, and it is based on the Siloti language. Silot in anglicized form is Sylhet, Sylhet. But the Silot is the phonetic original sound is Silot. So like see, like sighting, seeing something, see lot. So you can say, see everything. It's a coincidental spelling of the Siloti language, but this spelling that I have devised using the English script also gives you a clue as to the purpose and the remit that you see everything, that is to say, you observe everything around. So that's C-lot. And any queries, you can check our platforms on the social media as those platforms are operated today. So we didn't broadcast an edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel yesterday, which is Wednesday, the 29th of September. But we did post, and we post commentary and updates overnight and 24-hour, 247. One of the things we have been doing in the last 24 hours has been checking any events that have been taking place in support of the campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo. And the only substantial reference that we have been able to access has been to the campaign for Sabina Nessa. And the Sabina Nessa vigil in memory, in honor of her, in memory of Sabina Nessa, the one that has been reported so far, was organized in Leeds in Yorkshire. Now, although the Yorkshire Post, which is a platform for the scum party, has been for decades, their website hasn't produced anything, hasn't run anything that we can find so far, but we shall check later. The Yesterday Evening Post has got a piece about the vigil in honor of Sabina Nessa. And in Scotland, in Edinburgh, there was supposed to be a kind of peaceful demonstration in support of the campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo. Now, we have checked the Edinburgh, Glasgow-based papers, and so far at this stage, we have not come across any noticeable coverage. So we shall check again and update accordingly. When I say update, the updates are posted on the Khoodeelaar Twitter account more often than they are posted on the other platforms like the Khoodeelaar Facebook account or several accounts that are connected with the movement. So the movement is the movement defending the community in the East End of London, and the movement defending communities from the East End of London. Now, as anyone who has been carefully reading and our posts, and anyone who has been carefully listening to this broadcast would be familiar, we believe that the political atmosphere in this country doesn't exist. The social accountability, political accountability doesn't exist. And because of the absence of those and the absence of any ethics and morality in the behavior of the regime that is in place and in the behavior of the so-called opposition fronted by the political murderer of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, we assert that this is dark land, Little England, and it is dark land because there is no accountability, there is no transparency, There is no democracy, there is no actual ethics or morality. And most certainly there is no compassion. And just to make sure that anyone who is watching this for the first time, or who is watching this not for the first time necessarily, but who has watched this program in the past, but didn't take in all the intricate and extensive details that we broadcast every time. For example, we believe that there is no judiciary in this country. In England, Little England, England, in the UK, there is no judiciary that exists which the ordinary people can approach or access or seek just remedies through. There is none. And as part of that, we said that the licensed law traders, we devise the analytical expression, and we divide the licensed law traders into three groups. One is called the ones that are licensed to kind of trade as barristers. So that comes from the 4 inns of court. Inn, like the inn in the street, on the general kind of traveling kind of routes. Inn, you rest, I-double-N, not I-N, but inn. So there are 4 inns of court covering Little England, and those 4 inns of court have been there in existence for hundreds of years. So they issue the license to the persons who are then licensed to trade as barristers. I refused to get the license in the 1970s because I disagreed with the dishonest behavior of the Lincoln's Inn, which would have given me the license. But I have been advocating constitutional, ethical, moral kind of rights according to the universal legal and constitutional values for decades. And in my advocacy, I've encountered, that is, come across, not encountered as meant in the Indian films, but the police shoot dead absconding criminals, supposedly. The encounters that I've had, and I still have, with the various licensed law traders keep kind of proving, if you like, the assertion that licensed law traders are nothing to do with upholding the law or the legal rights. But licensed law traders are criminals, given the license to do whatever they like, and they've got impunity. So there is nothing, no accountability in this country for the behavior of licensed law traders, either as freelance kind of traders and barristers who appear before the courts. And most of the court benches, judges, are occupied by barristers. More of them are occupied by barristers, and a small number are occupied by solicitors. So the licensed law trade is a corrupt trade and it's illegal, taking the meaning of legality in its widest, most universal sense. And the other thing that I've been meaning to refer to is the comparison between the other so-called judicial jurisdictions and the English one. The English one is referred to as the adversarial one, and the others are referred to as inquisitorial and investigative ones. When it is admittedly an adversarial kind of system, so-called, it is bound to be completely corrupt and opportunistic. And as we have been saying about the events surrounding the court-related reports concerning the murder of Sabina Nessa, we are not, at this stage, we are not making any comments on those proceedings because we are imposing this voluntary kind of restrictions on ourselves as an organization, as a platform, as a broadcaster, that we don't want to interfere with the proceedings. In other words, what we are doing is observing the requirements of due process and rule of law. There is no due process in this country, there is no rule of law, but we are observing the requirements of due process and rule of law. That is to say, we are not making any comment about the status, the quality, the veracity of any of these statements made in court or as part of the court process. We are not doing that so that nobody can say that we in any way interfered or influenced any of those proceedings, interfered with or influenced. And we don't want to do that. In our view, Sabina Nessa, about whom we are publishing regularly, the wish that we wish her to rest in eternal peace. We have started doing this for the last 24 hours about Sarah Everard, who is murdered by the Metropolitan Policeman, has been kind of begun the trial of this murder, the kidnapper and rapist and murderer. Now, we said at the very early stage when Sarah Everard's murder was confirmed, but the Fleet Street didn't include this, but we did. We said that she definitely would have been raped by the kidnapper and the murderer. And now it has become clear that he raped her as well. Now, we don't want to speculate on the kind of evidence that is about to be completely or extensively given in this trial. And we don't want to do anything to interfere with or imply or kind of apparently suggest anything about the physical circumstances of the murder of Sabina Nessa until all the evidence has been kind of collected and the trial has begun. The trial has not begun, and there are issues about the kind of denial by the man who has been charged with a murder. He apparently denied. So we don't want to comment on any of that. At this stage, we are going to continue to wish Sabina Nessa eternal peace And we wish those who are genuinely bereaved, caring about her, and those who loved her, and those who love her even at this stage, those people, we wish them the most sincerest solidarity, and our prayers are with them, and of course with Sabina Nessa. And the same applies with Sarah Everard. We extend similar wishes to other people who have not been in the news, but who have been violated, murdered, attacked in this country and elsewhere. And we also say that anything we say on this program or anywhere else, anything we say or publish or post or circulate has been, and will continue to be totally based on evidence. If not a citable source of evidence, it is demonstrable evidence, let's say. For example, when we say that the Little England or England and the UK doesn't have a justice system, we don't say that because there is no other word for it. It is because of the evidence. And anyone who wants to know about me and my knowledge of the law and the legal system can rest assured that I have been examining the law, the legal system, more thoroughly than anybody else that I know. If anyone watching this disputes this on the basis that they know somebody who has been doing it more thoroughly than I am, get in touch by direct message on the Twitter. Just give the name or names of the persons or person and the facts. Don't ask any question, don't ask anything else. Just give me the information and I'll check it. Subject to that, pending that, and there is at this stage no such evidence before me that anyone else has been doing the investigation of the legal system, Little England, UK, whatever, than me. And somebody asked me a while ago about court cases, winning court cases. Let me tell you this. The legal system, the legal bureaucracy is not about court cases. Most of the legal transactions, most of the legal or law-based relationships take place outside of a case, outside of courtrooms. So the answer to that question is yes. And that is based on the level, the status, and the quality, whatever the word is supposed to mean, the quality of legal investigation, advocacy, arguments that has been involved in each case. That is, each case meaning each occasion, each transaction, each exchange. So just take an example of a Gloucester County Court, let's say in England. Most of my advocacy, in fact, all the advocacy for the last many years is done by correspondence, contact, communications. And in this particular incident, let's say at Gloucester County Court, the relevant county court judge said to the person I was advising, and the person was standing in the court in front of the judge. So the judge said to the person, please let Mr. Haque know this, that, and the other, including the fact that I should not be contacting the court on his behalf, this particular individual's behalf. Contacting the court on behalf of anybody, X, Y, or Z, is perfectly within due process and within the legal rights. What the particular judge was concerned about was that I was exposing his idiocy and ignorance. And he could not survive that if I continued to do that. So extrapolate that kind of attitude and replace that judge by the legal section or the particular personnel involved in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council or in a housing association in Gloucester town itself, which was part of the reason for my contacting on behalf of this particular individual. So both the Tower Hamlets Council personnel, employees, and the Gloucester particular housing association or housing organization, let's say, made identical communications to this individual. And they set out their request that this individual communicated to me or should communicate to me words to the effect that I should stop contacting the council or that housing organization on behalf of this individual. And this can be multiplied over the last few decades. This can be multiplied a few hundred times, if not 1,000 times. Now, why would they do that? Answer is that they are finding themselves unable to deal with the demands, legal demands that I'm making on behalf of X or Y. Now, if you take the example that I have cited a few times before, not recently, but a few months ago, up to a few months ago, about David Panic, who is a member of the House of Peers, but is also a licensed law trader, a barrister, and he has got an additional tag called QC. Now, he was hired by the Manchester City Football Club, not the Manchester United, but Manchester City Football Club, over an instruction they were going to give him about a ruling by a European football regulating agency that ruled against them, the Manchester City Football Club or Association. And the terms of the, if you like, retainer or the instruction to David Panic, the terms included that he would be paid £20,000 per day Now I say it on the record that I have given advice which has included my having to spend more than a day in one particular legal matter. Now, if I were to charge, which I have never done, never would do, but if I were to charge at the rate that David Pennick has done, because I've been advocating legal rights since long before David Pennick left school. So if I were to do this at his rate, then it would be hundreds of millions of pounds, not 1 million pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds. So this is part of the answer to the question that this individual made to me. Have I won a case, personal case? Of course I have. But the case has to be defined. The only difference between my way of doing things and a case like framing it within the courtroom or rooms is that you are not in there. You're doing it in writing or by telephone or both. So I would have been entitled to hundreds of millions of pounds in that particular contextual reference in that way. And I would have been entitled to billions of pounds in terms of the benefits that have been produced by my action. So who is going to pay me billions over decades or millions, hundreds of millions? Not these people that I've been approached to help. So the question of advice by licensed law traders, and I'm skipping Sabina, Nessa, and Sarah Everard for reasons I've stated already. And I'm moving to Baby Angel Geronimo and the people who must have, because I have not been aware of Baby Angel Geronimo until in the last, let's say, 2 months. People who have been or should have been or would have been or may have been involved in opposing the criminal perpetrator at the depraved DEFRA would have included licensed law traders. And if they were actually competent, knowledgeable, dedicated to upholding the international, objectively defined standards of rights and entitlements that Baby Angel Geronimo has been entitled to, they would have put the depraved DEFRA out of business by now already. Okay, that is the, let's say, the top heading. Because the details of the actual communications among people, between people who have been, at least on the face of it, on the side of Baby Angel Geronimo. I have published already at least 100 separate kind of advice posts suggesting various legal process-related actions that could have been filed against depraved DEFRA and against the depraved Georgian justice and against the depraved Christine Middle Miss, who has been supposedly for a significant length of time in the post as the chief vet. These are only three people or two people, but there are others like the permanent secretary and other people who have been issuing or repeating substantially the same statement, confected lies against the status of BabyAngelGeronimo, his health and his innocence and his perfect health. So, to the question as to why the legal options that have been available have not been carried out or asserted, there can be two types of answer. One is that the decisions or the advice against taking the actions that have been relied on have been given by people who are in it for their careers. As I said, I'm not naming anyone because I have not seen any internal documents. But looking from the outside and looking on the basis that there have not been any of the actions that I've been advising, these are actions that are not kind of dependent on the High Court accepting the applications or not. My advice has included filing multiple applications by multiple numbers of persons supporting BabyAngelGeronimo's position, making claims and filing claims in the county courts. And of course, in the Queen's Bench Division, claims seeking damages in defamation, libel, and slander. I have not heard any statement or any report that any application has been made in defamation, libel, and slander on behalf of BabyAngelGeronimo. There have been options as well to take action against both the depraved DEFRA and others involved in the invented series of lies against the BabyAngelGeronimo. So no action has been taken except the ones that we can actually independently access the kind of quote judgments on. There are three. One is by a man called Murray, another is by a man called Griffiths, and the last or the latest one is by a woman called Stacy. Now, even reading the contents of those, of course, those are abbreviated, brief, shortened versions of the full proceedings. But even the ones that have got factual references, the factual references are untrue. References that suggest that the depraved DEFRA has done this, that, and the other against the allegation by the side representing BabyAngelGeronimo. Every single item, let's say there are 20 listed incidents or claims or counters to the claims. The counters are untrue. Why? Because there is no reference to date, time, and place and the action in the answers. Think about that. Now, if you think that the legal system is supposed to be on the evidence, then these three judges separately have behaved identically, illegally, criminally, prejudicially, untruthfully. And that shows that they have been serving the government, no matter how stupid, how untruthful, how falsified, how false the government's position has been. And it has been false, untruthful, invented, corrupt, criminally conceived series of lies and defamation against baby angel Geronimo. Then there are the kind of objective standards about what the, let's say, the supporters of this scum, Boris Johnson, say in the Daily Mail, for example. That people who criticize and condemn Johnson and his regime, not necessarily about Brexit, but in the whole kind of assessment of Johnson's honesty, fitness for purpose, and Johnson's lack of character and morality and lack of compassion. The Daily Mail says that this is all the criticisms, all the critics of Johnson are lacking in common sense. So that's the phrase I was looking for. This is tomorrow's date of the private lie. This is private lie. It's £2.50 in the cover price, which I have paid to Tesco yesterday. This is private lie number 1557, and it's dated from tomorrow, 1st of October, until the 14th of October. And what this is saying, it's saying fuel crisis deepens. Now this is a non-ideological cover, let's say. This is just summarizing some of the key topical kind of events. Let's say here, the bubbles, that is the boundary within which these words are written. They're called bubbles. So one person is saying in a car that is in the queue, I've got to fill up so I can get to the empty supermarket. Now that is a clearly obvious reference to the fact that the shops, the convenience shops, the supermarkets are getting empty, the shelves are getting empty. And today, the shop that I did the shopping in didn't have bread. And it's one of the country's biggest supermarkets, the Sainsbury's. And then this is how it's going. First of all, it says, I've got to fill up so I can get to the empty supermarket. And the second one says, and then cook nothing with no gas. And the last one on this side, let's say, says, Britain's completely trucked. This is a play on the word, a swear word, let's say, And then there is this Boris says everything is fine. And the next one, as a response to that one, is he's panic lying. It's again a play on the panic buying. And then there is another one from another car. Are we there yet? And the last one says, yes, we are nearly at the 1970s. And the 1970s was dominated mainly by Harold Wilson in the post of Prime Minister. After Ted Heath lost the election at the beginning of there were two elections in the 1970s. Well, three actually, but let's say that the early 1970s. So when they talk about 1970s, Fleet Street, and we count this one as part of Fleet Street, although they would not accept that, but on the evidence of the contents of the road, we say that one. Remember why we are talking about this cover on Private Eye 1557, 1st of October to 14th of October. This is because of the depraved DEFRA, which is fronted by the criminal George Eustace, whose name we have edited into calling George Injustice. He is the only member of the Boris Johnson cabal, that is a cabinet, who has gone on the record as saying there is no fuel crisis. There is no crisis. Now, as I said, this heading on the Private Eye, fuel crisis deepens, is not a one-off. All these, this is yesterday the Financial Times, and the Financial Times has got a letter now. There is a letter headed Tories evoke dysfunction seen in East Germany. That's the letter in the Financial Crimes on Wednesday, the 29th of September, 2021. And this is what it says. It's quite a short letter. It's written by Christine. Now, this is an unbelievable name. And I'll give the letters in the spelling. Fuchs. It really does pronounce as the obscene word. I can only marvel at the achievement of this conservative government to proudly push the country into a state last seen in socialist East Germany before the Berlin Wall came down. Empty shelves in shops, queues at petrol stations, prevention of foreigners entering the country, a disgruntled population that mutters criticism under its breath. And this is a letter in response to the item memo to Boris Johnson, Prines Ungrip, FT View, September the 28th. So this is the Financial Crimes letter talking about empty shelves and so on. And the front page of the Private Lie. Except that The liar at DEFRA, George Injustice, denies that there is empty shelves and that there is any fuel crisis. This is the same George Injustice who denies in all his communications the perfect health of baby angel Geronimo. And he keeps repeating the lie that baby angel Geronimo is not healthy. But baby angel Geronimo is as healthy as any physical, biological being can be. What this denial of the fuel crisis and the empty shops and so on reminds, if any reminder is needed, is that George Injustice is a congenital liar beyond any justification, and he should be sacked and he should be prosecuted for plotting murder against baby angel Geronimo. He should be jointly prosecuted for plotting murder conspiracy to murder the innocent baby angel Geronimo, in addition to conspiracy and actual behavior amounting to harassment, causing distress and anxiety. Now, in the interpretation and in the version of the law, constitution as a political campaigning resource and tool and platform, I have said, and I have practiced this for decades. The fact that a case formally kind of completed application to a court according to the forms and civil procedure rules and criminal procedure rules, etc. The fact that an application to a court is made must not be treated or interpreted as the applicant asserting that they are going to get a ruling in their favor in the case. That is not the purpose, because that will not happen. It cannot be guaranteed. The purpose of filing a court case or claim is to put the other party, that is in this case depraved, crass criminal, DEFRA, on notice. And if you multiply that kind of application, which I suggested, by filing applications in county courts across the country, then it creates the kind of pressure that the depraved DEFRA has never been put under. And the kind of pressure that the depraved DEFRA cannot overcome. As I said, every single day, without any ideological resource, there are factual events that show that if the government, if the regime fails to deliver the service, then that becomes, regardless of ideology, something that decides the tendency. decide the suitability and justification of the regime being in place. So if you extrapolate the behavior of the last 4 years plus by the depraved DEFRA against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo, against whom the depraved DEFRA has been lying. So if you extrapolate that kind of behavior and refer to the government's statements and actions concerning the fuel shortage, concerning, let's say, the COVID-19 and the extra kind of cash they made available to people who were put under lockdown. If they didn't do that, and if they said that they were not going to do that, then they would not be allowed to stay in power in posts. If they said what they said about what they have been saying against baby angel Geronimo, if they said the same thing against others in the society, then they would not be in post. So why has George Injustice been allowed to carry on lying against baby angel Geronimo and carry on being in post? And none of the lies, none of his lies has been questioned, challenged by the Fleet Street. Remember what we said before about the role and behavior by Private Lies editor Jan Pisov. Because Jan Pisov behaved just like Keir Starmer and Dominic Lai's son, in effect endorsing the conspiracy against the baby angel Geronimo. And a few of the words used in that piece in Private Lie were intentionally cruel, as they repeated the depraved DEFRA lies against baby angel Geronimo, and they attempted to mock the healthy baby angel Geronimo. It was like the criminal phrase delusion, word delusion, that Nigel Lawson's lying son Dominic used in his criminally responsible, corrupt piece in the Mail on Sunday. That was, in effect, a carbon copy of the agenda statement that the criminals at depraved DEFRA would have made if they were allowed to make that kind of statement in their name and against baby angel Geronimo. But they hid under Dominic Lai's son, who did their dirty work for them. Now, just to look at the Telegraph front page cartoon, about Keir Starmer. This is the man that we call the political murderer of the Labour Party. So no one in Fleet Street is going to say that, and nobody is going to admit to seeing this in our publications. But they have definitely done that, because everything about Keir Starmer is one aspect of the confirmation of what we say about him, that he has politically murdered the Labour Party. So here is the caption to the kind of cartoon based on the ongoing conference of the Labour Party. Being Labour leader is a lot like playing James Bond. Everyone wonders who will replace you. And they've got a picture of him embracing a woman who is supposedly his wife, I think. And Starmer and Ian Pissoff of Private Lie are among the non-conservative scum that have actually colluded with and echoed the criminal kind of lies against baby angel Geronimo. Manufactured, invented by the depraved DEFRA, fronted by the lying criminal George Injustice. We shall come back to all of those lies against baby angel Geronimo. Running through the, as we said, we don't want to comment on the proceedings about Sarah Everard, just to give an impression on the coverage of the sort of start of the trial of her murderer that began yesterday. So that's in the Daily Express. And the Daily Star doesn't have anything on the front page about Sarah Everard. How dare the criminals? Because they've got instead a picture of this woman who has been engaged in a relentless propaganda on her behalf by the dirty digger Murdoch scum, Katie Price. They haven't got anything about the start of the trial of the kidnapper, the rapist, and the murderer of Sarah Everard that began yesterday. And I'm still looking for the Daily Star hiding. So that's the one that they've got on page 9. They've got it on page 9 because on the previous pages they've got James Bond and a woman showing her leg. Now this is the Daily Mirror. These are the papers on Thursday. Fleet Street papers on Thursday, the 30th of September 2021. And this is the Daily Mail. Now, the Daily Mail is the one that has been calling for the sacking of the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Cressida Dix. So when they say that the policeman who kidnapped, raped, and murdered Sarah Everard, they said that you are the very worst of humanity. That raises the question as to when this very worst of humanity was actually allowed to be recruited to the and by the London Metropolitan Police. Because it cannot be before Cressida Dick was made the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. So we shall investigate in due course of those facts. Now, that's the Telegraph, which is normally we call it the daily driving Boris graph. And that aspect, the fact that this kidnapper and rapist and murderer abused the law about COVID to entrap Sarah Everard raises questions about the police. He's not a murderer, rapist, and kidnapper who is not a police. He is a police. So when was he recruited, and what are the checks and balances? And the rigor that should have been applied at every aspect of his personality, suitableness, etc., before he was given the jobs. Now, this is somebody who was employed to protect diplomats. Now, how did this happen? How did this kidnapper and rapist and murderer, how did he pass through whatever stages, if there were any stages, and get the positions? And he was a carrier of arms as well. He was licensed to carry guns. So this is not a minor issue. The fact that both Priti Patel, who is in post as the Home Secretary in the name of this country, and Sadiq Khan, the man in post as the mayor at the expense of London, so both of them, Priti Patel and Sadiq Khan, have praised Cressida Dick, and they have said that each one of them separately has got the full confidence in Cressida Dick. So the only people or the only source of any criticism about her fitness has actually come from the Daily Mail. How is that possible? That in the weeks after the arrest of this kidnapper and rapist and murderer of Sarah Everard, and after the attacks on the vigil by the police, Cressida Dick was given a vote of confidence by the so-called mayor at the expense of London and the so-called Home Secretary. This is a question of accountability and the question of standard of policing, and the standard that is essential for the basic safety. Now this one is the Independent, yes? And this is the one that says losing trust in the police. That is not the case. There is no trust in the police. And it lists the key kind of systematic criminality that he was allowed to indulge in by Cressida Dick. Serving officer used COVID laws, handcuffs, that is again meant for criminals, and his warrant card to falsely arrest and kidnap Sarah Everard. And he then drove Sarah 80 miles before raping her and murdering her with his police belt. And the third line is completely stupid. It says, Met Commissioner Cressida Dick is urged to restore trust in the force and improve women's safety on streets. How dare the idiots at the eye even say that? She's not in a position to do anything. That is, her record shows that she cannot be trusted herself. Now, there is no policing where it matters, not only about women's safety, but on all key aspects and criteria. Policing doesn't exist. And policing has been disappearing from Britain for more than 20 years. How did this criminal get away? And as I said, we are not going to comment on the contents because it's too upsetting for a start, and also we don't want to make any comments while the trial is ongoing. But all the facts of the kidnap, rape, and murder of Sarah Everard show that the police don't exist in London. Not this, just about this particular series of crimes, but crimes against Sabina Nessa and the crimes against the woman community support officer who was murdered in a South London kind of park. There is no atmosphere in this country where the ordinary public, the many, have any ordinary understanding about the relationship between ordinary people and people employed as police. Because for a start, there is no evidence that the police are policing for safeguarding and saving people and stopping criminals. The series of events and series of allegations based on the evidence of police attacking the vigil participants should be investigated as part of the inquiry into why the Met Police is not fit for purpose. Why were they attacking the vigil people? As I said, this is policing is a crisis, quite apart from whatever the party in power is so-called maybe. And there is nothing in the proceedings in the Labour Party so-called conference about policing, about the safety of women, about the safety of other people that the police are letting down, but police should be protecting. Women are being raped in Britain at alarming numbers. And the reason why they are being raped at alarming rates and numbers is very much directly linked to the fact that there is no justice for the victims of rape and there is no prosecution of rapists and sex-related murders of women. And as I said before, this is dark land. There is no kind of due process, there is no regulation, there is nothing. Because here is a piece about Cornwall, where local people are demanding that people who own holiday homes in the county, this Cornwall, repay to the public the 100 million of COVID relief funds that they misappropriated or misclaimed for. As I said, I mean, the details of what this thing did to Sarah Everard are too shocking, and I shall not be reading them, I shall not be sharing them. So we shall be looking at the dysfunction and the dark, evil regime fronted by congenital liar Boris Johnson and containing the congenital evil wrongdoer George Injustice in the next part or parts. As he said, we didn't broadcast an edition on Wednesday, the 29th of September 2021.